We made it to the end of another week, y'all. Well, let's just jump straight into the news. We're going to begin where we always begin, and that is with Israel and Gaza. The International Court has issued a directive to the state of Israel that it must facilitate, the distribution of aid in the Gaza Strip. And I think this is really important because it keeps in front of mind the devastation, not only of the infrastructure, but the fact that we have a population that is starving, a population that lacks running water, basic amenities for life. And so the ICJ has basically ordered the state of Israel to facilitate the distribution of aid, that its claims around UNRWA and others are baseless. Now, we know that ceasefires are always fragile, particularly under these sorts of conditions in this particular region. We have seen some of the horrific images of Hamas dealing with those whom they think were in a way complicit with Israel's execution of the war. It's horrible. It's horrific. But we also know, according to some reporting, that Israel has violated the ceasefire at least 80 times. At least 80 times. The death is still happening, right? And over more than 460 Jewish artists, writers, policy folk have written a letter urging the international community to continue to exert pressure on Israel to live up to the ceasefire. They understand who Benjamin Netanyahu is. They understand what the Likud party represents. And they're asking for the international community to continue to exert pressure, the same kind of pressure that brought Israel to the table and led to the ceasefire in the first place. And here we're talking about former members of the Knesset who signed on to the letter, all the way to the British filmmaker Jonathan Glazer. So we're going to keep our eye on this because we know that the ceasefire is fragile. Over the course of the week, it happened over the last weekend, but we had the No Kings rally where we saw over 7 million people worldwide come out and protest or to denounce the executive overreach of the Trump administration. Over 600 plus events. We saw events from Bozeman, Montana to Bryson City, North Carolina, as well as huge rallies in New York and Washington, D.C., and Boston and Chicago and Los Angeles and the like. Now, I've written about this in my last post last week, but what's fascinating to me about the No Kings rally? Two things. One, of course, was the import, the significance of the moment. We don't want to read marches or rallies as the end of political expression. I wrote the introduction to the autobiography of James Lawson, which is coming out in the coming months, entitled Nonviolence. And I learned so much in reading his text. But what he said is that the march isn't the end. The march is a dramatic form of education. It's a moment in which we can engage in the formation of attention around a particular set of issues. What follows, civil disobedience, strikes, boycotts, and the like, that follows from the formation of attention that the rally or the march makes possible. So we don't want to overburden what we saw on last Saturday, but we have to understand its import. So we go from the spectacle of it all, to understanding the way in which the spectacle enables organizing, not just mobilizing, but organizing. And we know the No Kings folk are trying to do that. So we have to keep our eyes open on calls that are going to come, on efforts that will evidence themselves at the local level in terms of organizing everyday ordinary people to build on this energy. We can't assume that just simply the expression of our disenchantment with the Trump administration is sufficient. That's not enough, right? That's not enough. We still have power. We still have power. Remember the numbers of folk who came out and how they cut across demographics. A large number of them were of a particular generation, but we saw a large number of folk across, right, a wide variety of Americans in so many ways out in the streets. So we need to be mindful of that. But there's another aspect of the No Kings rally that really drew my attention. And that was, it became, at least in the press, among certain circles, for a moment, a battle over who are the true patriots of the country. And of course, that had a lot to do with Speaker Johnson's description of the rallies as hate America rallies. It had a lot to do with Republicans describing the event as potential anti-Antifa moments, waiting for chaos, because there's this reading of the mid-20th century, right? These two dueling readings of the mid-20th century. One reading is that it's a period that opened up, right, our very idea of democracy itself. The second Reconstruction that allowed for us, the country, to reach for its promise for all Americans. And then there's the other version, is that it was a period of utter chaos, where the barbarians stormed the gates, as it were. And so here we have this moment, right, over who are the true patriots of the country. And it reminded me of, the Democratic National Convention with the nomination of Kamala Harris. And remember all of those flags that were being waved? And, political commentators saying that this is something the Democratic Party has rarely done, that they haven't embraced patriotism as a way of mobilizing its constituencies. I think that's the wrong battleground. That's the wrong battlefield. Why? Why do I think it's the wrong battlefield? I have my own kind of thinking about patriotism, but what I want to say is that it fails to acknowledge the divided soul of the nation. That the likes of Donald Trump and Mike Johnson and Stephen Miller and others, their conception of America, no matter your flag waving, no matter your declarations of love of country, their conceptions of America do not include people like me. We play minor bit parts. There's this divided soul. I write about this in my forthcoming book, America USA. This divided soul, this double consciousness at the heart of the nation is that America at once imagines itself as a beacon of freedom, and on the other hand, it imagines itself as a white republic. And at least what I heard coming out of the mouth of Mike Johnson was a description of that other America, those people who threaten the idea of America that they hold so close to the heart. So it's interesting. You can try to convince them that you are patriots too, but that their version of America. And as I was thinking about this and I wrote about it, in the context of Black political struggle, we have often thought that if we only prove our patriotism, that somehow these folk would embrace us. We've thought about this in the context of war. Frederick Douglass makes an argument in some ways around the Civil War, although it was bound up with crushing slavery in the South, but it was also tied to a certain understanding of our fidelity to the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. We heard the same things in terms of World War I and World War II, right? An appeal to American patriotism as a way of showing our fidelity to the country, our fealty to the principles of American democracy, only to confront abject violence or rejection, even in uniform, could get your eye knocked out, right? In Georgia, across the South, right? To be humiliated in segregated units and the like, no matter the courage that was demonstrated. I think the appeal to patriotism is to concede the ground of a certain imagining of the country that has gotten us in trouble. I'm not trying to deny the significance, right, of love of country talk. I'm not trying to deny that. But what I find at the heart of it is this implicit appeal, right, to the forgotten American, to those people who really matter. And what I think is really important for us is to try to leave all of that stuff behind. We have to figure out how to shift the center of gravity of our politics, not to play the game as it has been configured for so much, for generations, for so much of our lives. For so much of our lives, the Democratic Party has found itself trying to win back, those Democrats who fled because of Lyndon Baines Johnson's decisions, the civil rights legislation, the Voting Rights Act, and the like, because of the end of Jim and Jane Crow in the South. For so long, the Democratic Party has been trying to appeal to those independents, those copperheads, those folk, quote unquote, in the middle, by way of becoming, in interesting sorts of ways, Republican light. I know some folks might disagree with this, but I'm just saying, I want us to get out of that field of engagement. I want us to get rid of these labels. I want us to think about hailing our fellows, trying to convince others without appealing to these shorthands that gum up everything in the aftermath of it all. In the aftermath of the appeal, that gum up so much. Right? I want us to reimagine America, and that's a patriotic act, I must admit. On a certain level, it's bound up with a conception or a view of country that's closer to the ground, that has nothing to do with this abstract idea, right? But rather with the people we love, with our generalized concern for others, with a conception of obligation to one another that should be evident in policy, in the way we live our lives, that we need to stand in right relation to one another. In order for that to happen, we got to stop lying to each other. But I think we got to open up space for a different way of doing politics. And I say that not as a critique or criticism or dismissal of the No King's March. Remember, I said it's the staging ground for organizing, for doing the hard work close to the ground of politics as we try to beat back the fascism of the Trump administration and MAGA Republicans. But I want us to be careful. I want us to be careful in how we do it so that we don't repeat, that we don't reproduce the very conditions that bind our hands and our feet. That's kind of abstract, but hopefully we can have a conversation about this together, right? Now, but I think that it's important for us to understand that the No King's March was really critical because it focused our attention on the overreach of the executive branch of what Trump is trying to do. We know that in the Bay Area, there's 1,500, at least according to some reporting, 1,500 Border Patrol are staging at the U.S. Coast Guard facility outside of Oakland in Alameda, right? Ready to descend on San Francisco. Overreach, right? Donald Trump deploying National Guard in Chicago and in Memphis and in Washington, D.C., and the courts allowing him to do the same in Portland. And now San Francisco finds itself in the crosshairs. What is going on here? Not only do we have Republicans signing off on Americans being subject, right, to the militarization of their lives, right, to the cruelty of ICE, right, being terrorized by their own government, right, exceeding the bounds of executive power, in my view, in so many ways, or at least blowing past basic norms of American democracy. We see that going on, right? No kings, no kings. We don't want any thrones, no crowns, no thrones, no kings, was the mantra, right? We see in North Carolina, the House of Representatives, the GOP, redrawing the congressional map. Why? Because they know there's a chance that they can lose the House of Representatives. And so if instead of allowing democracy to play itself out, they want to rig the terms because they don't think they can win fairly. Mark Elias has been doing a wonderful job keeping track of this work with the Democracy Docket. North Carolina, y'all. We already know what's going on in Texas. We already know what's happening across Republican-led states. Here we have another attempt to rig the game. To rig the game. Now, mind you, there are these competing forces. There are those within the Republican Party. Let's call the Republican Party for what it is. It's a MAGA party. There are those within the Republican Party who are trying to reimagine, to deconstruct our conception of government, our idea of government. They're going to deconstruct the administrative state, not to get rid of it, but to rebuild it so that it can do their bidding no matter who's in office. There are those folks. All the trains are running on that project. That's Project 2025. And then there's the grift. There's the abject corruption, the greed that we see with Donald Trump. So as long as Trump is the carnival barker, doing what he's doing, it's going to prove what? The DOJ to give him $250 million, I suppose, $230 million. It's going to do all of this. He's giving Argentina billions, and then it's going to allow the beef to come over. America first. Right. All of this stuff around Bitcoin and the like. Folk, these billionaires being wined and dined at the White House. Corruption at its core. But that's up here. Over here, we're going to allow you to grift while all the trains are running, changing the very nature of American life. Fascism at its core. At least to my mind. But they're going to rig the terms of the midterms in a run-up to the next presidential election. And they're doing it state by state by state. Now, no thrones, no crowns, no kings. Right? No thrones, no crowns, no kings. Overreach of executive power, trying to keep him in office for what ends, for what purposes, not only for his grift, but also to change the very nature of government itself. And you got to combine that with what we saw, what we continue to see, these extrajudicial killings. Now, another quote unquote interdiction, right, by the military, a boat off the Pacific, right, blown to bits. I mean, it's unlawful extrajudicial killing. What was happening in the Caribbean Sea and off the coast of Venezuela, right? It's almost as if the Trump administration is trying to, right, provoke another war where everyday ordinary people, no matter your color, no matter your zip code, no matter who you, everyday ordinary folk will be deployed for what? For oil. For oil. Greed. And now we have these people making summary judgments. Even if you're convicted of drug dealing in the United States, you're not given the death penalty. And it's so, I heard this from some commentator on CNN, I think. I mean, the ease with which these people talk about killing folk. How easily they reconcile themselves with death. Right? With death. So what we see here is the exercise of U.S. power unchecked. They don't give a damn about international law. They don't even give a damn about law and order in the context of the United States, the constraints within the U.S. And we're on our way to becoming an international pariah if we're not already there. Donald Trump is kind of shifting the axis, at least shifting the very ways in which the U.S. functions openly on the international landscape. We're not even pretending anymore. Just the raw exercise of power. No thrones, no crowns, no kings. So 1,500 border guards deployed to in the San Francisco Bay Area. Right? North Carolina redrawing maps in order to secure the House of Representatives so that Donald Trump can continue to do what he wants to do. Not only Donald Trump, but those Republicans who continue to pursue the agenda laid out, mapped out in Project 2025. And then, of course, the extrajudicial killings, right, in the Caribbean Sea and now in the Pacific under the guise of a war on drugs. These people don't give a damn about norms. They don't give a damn about legal matters. They don't care about oversight. Donald Trump is destroying the East Wing. Not only because he's nouveau riche, you know, his money's not old and he behaves like it. Not that I know anything about old money, but he behaves like it. Behaves like, you know, his stuff is so damn tacky, you know? So he's going to destroy the East Wing to build a ballroom, this huge ballroom. He believes the people's house is his. He believes it belongs to him. Now, look, there's been reporting about previous presidents engaged in renovations of the White House. That's not the issue. The issue here isn't about the destruction of a building, a historic building. The issue is that Donald Trump believes he can do whatever the hell he wants to do with no constraint. It's overreach of executive power. This is the imperial presidency on steroids. Norms. He has no concern for them. The White House is his. And just as they're demolishing American democracy right in front of our eyes, the demolition of the East Wing becomes symbolic of what's happening to the country broadly. Now, I know I'm going on a bit long and I don't want to go on too long here, but I just want to call your attention to these things. Why folk were calling for, are chanting no thrones, no crowns, no kings. I mean, not only is it is, how can I put this? Not only are we seeing this all-out assault on government, all the trains are running, Project 2025. Not only are we seeing grift and greed and corruption, the Carnival Barker and his family are making a killing. You know, the projection onto the Biden White House was in some ways a kind of regret that they didn't get as much as they needed to get the first time around. But not only do you have the grift and the corruption, you also have the white nationalist project that is the Trump administration. It is a white nationalist agenda, y'all. We see it with the refugee policy, changing it that benefit only particular folk, white folk, South African refugees. Now the reporting is clear. 7,000, the mid 7,000, you know, something of that number, right? But we have to see it for what it is. Those shithole countries that he talked about. They are trying to address the underlying assumptions that drive great replacement. The fear and panic that the browning of America will undermine their understanding of the country as a white republic. So they're attacking that reality from all angles around immigration policy, around voting rights and the like. And now you see it explicitly in the shift in refugee policy. They're hearkening back, as I've said over and over again, to an immigration regime of the 1920s. They want to undo the Hart-Crane Immigration Act of 1965 and go back to the Reed Johnson Immigration Act of 1924, a piece of legislation basically written by the Klan, as I've said over and over and over again. It's a white nationalist project too. White nationalism, greed and corruption, and this all-out authoritarian assault, right, on norms and basic foundations of democratic life. What they want to call ordered liberty. In the name of ordered liberty. That's just the rebranding of authoritarianism, y'all. The rebranding of authoritarianism. Look at this piece on Paul. I know I might be mispronouncing his name, Ingrassia, the guy who just withdrew his nomination for special counsel. There's a wonderful piece by Kate Rogers in the New York Times. I put the link here, where she writes that hate is not a deal breaker in Trump's Washington. That hate is not a deal breaker in Trump's Washington, right? So this man could say all the things that he said He has his temperament is inclined to Nazism, right? He can be an explicit supporter of Nick Fuentes, a clear white supremacist. He's tired of us, as he says. Tired of black folk. That's Nick Fuentes. This is this guy. We can see all the things we saw in the chat with young Republicans, and J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, is just going to say, oh, these are just boys these young people being young people. Many of them grown-ass folk. Read the Kate Rogers piece. Hate is not a deal breaker. And I think it's really important, because I heard my friends on Morning Joe and the like talk about this, right? I think it's really important that the way in which these people respond to this actually reveal their affinity to the views, their affinity for those positions. J.D. Vance isn't just defending them because he wants to defend them. He's defending them because perhaps he holds some similar views, even though he says it's deplorable. Trying to say that this can't be the basis for cancel culture, because these people have undermined the tacit agreement that came out of the mid-20th century that explicit racism had to be banished to the margins of American political discourse. They have upended that norm. All of this detritus has been allowed to saturate American political life. So hatred is not a deal breaker. It's at the core, one of the pillars of what they're up to, at least from my view. And you guys can disagree with me on this, but I think it's a white nationalist project, plain and simple. What's driving it in so many ways is the panic and terror around Great Replacement. They want to put us back in our place. They believe that cohesion is bound to blood and soil. Blood and soil. That America as an idea isn't sufficient for a vibrant and robust national project. So what drives it? What drives it? You can see all the black folk, all the ones that they fired. It hasn't even been a year yet. All the folk that they're going after, hasn't even been a year yet. Look at what they're doing to schools, universities, and colleges. This so-called agreement. I need to shut up. I'm taking too long. This so-called agreement. Look at what's going on at University of Virginia and the like. Look what happened at Harvard. New York Times reporting that Harvard has seen a serious decrease, right, in the number of students admitted in its black students admitted in its freshman class. Only 11.5% of the first-year student body was black. 14% last year, down from 18% in 2023. 18% in 2023, 11.5% in 2025. At Princeton, my own beloved institution, the lowest admission of black students since 1968, 5%. 5%. Shifting the grounds of American higher education, reversing a trend of the increasing diversification of higher ed, which gives folk more ample opportunity, right? Coming at this whole thing from all angles, trying to redirect the very ways in which the country goes about its business. I've gone on too long, but I hope I've helped try to focus some things. Keep your eye out on the Mamdani and Cuomo race in New York. Keep an eye on it. I'm often baffled by the fact that people will support Andrew Cuomo. It just shows you that certain liberals, I'm not even talking about the MAGA folk, certain liberals prefer fascism, would prefer a person who's engaged in sexual harassment than someone who's actually trying to address the conditions of everyday ordinary people. We need to get rid of these labels. I'm not interested in whether or not he's ideologically a democratic socialist. He's addressing affordability. trying to give us, trying to shift the center of gravity of how we think about governing in a place like New York City. Keep your eye on it. Well, 3 things. All the trains are running, trying to undermine our very idea of government, deconstructing the administrative state in pursuit of an idea of government that is in alignment with their understanding of ordered liberty. That's 1. Unleash greed, grift, and corruption. That's 2. And it's a white nationalist project. It's a white nationalist project. Made me turn to Nikki Thompson, this reggae artist who did a version of Syl Thomas's "Is It Because I'm Black?" Is it because I'm black? The original was which was released, I believe, in 1969, was arranged by Donny Hathaway, but it's this reggae version. Nikki Thompson's "Is It Because I'm Black?" Is it because I'm black? That spoke to me this morning. We have racists at the helm. What are we going to do about it? We have greed at the helm. What are we going to do about it? We have fascists trying to demolish American democracy right in front of our eyes in the name of a conception, an idea of America that is white through and through.